At the will reading, my daughter-in-law smirked and said, "I'll be rich by this evening." Everyone looked at her in disbelief, but she didn't care. She was certain she would walk away with everything. When the lawyer finally opened the envelope, what he read out left her speechless, and it changed the future of our family forever. If this story has caught your attention, don't forget to subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I am Evelyn Hayes, 62 years old, and I was sitting in that quiet lawyer's office with my children, still carrying the weight of losing my husband. The room smelled of polished wood and coffee, but underneath it all was tension so sharp you could almost feel it in your chest. To my right sat my daughter Claire, 36, always the gentle one. She reached for my hand when she saw how nervous I was. Across from us was my son Michael, 40, who tried to keep a brave face but kept shifting in his chair. And then there was Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, Michael's wife. She leaned back with her arms crossed, lips curled into a smug smile, as if she already owned the house, the savings, and everything my husband and I had built. I could still hear her words ringing in my ears. She had leaned over to Claire before the lawyer arrived and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "By tonight, I'll finally be rich." Claire frowned and turned away, disgusted, but Vanessa only smirked harder. The lawyer walked in a few minutes later, holding the sealed envelope with my husband's will. The air in the room grew heavier. My heart was racing, not because I cared about money, but because I knew how much damage Vanessa could cause if she got control of what we had worked for. My husband and I had built our life through sacrifice, and I couldn't stand the thought of it ending up in the wrong hands. We all sat down around the long wooden table. The lawyer placed the envelope in the center and looked at each of us. No one spoke. Vanessa's smirk grew wider, as if she was already counting the money in her head. I held my breath, waiting for words that would either break me or finally set me free. The lawyer cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses before breaking the seal on the envelope. The sound of paper tearing seemed louder than it should have been, and every head at the table turned toward him. Vanessa leaned forward eagerly, her smirk spreading across her face like she already knew the outcome. She even whispered under her breath, "This won't take long." I clenched my hands together in my lap, forcing myself not to respond. The lawyer began to read the formal opening lines of the will, but Vanessa interrupted before he could finish. "We don't need all this legal jargon," she said with a laugh, waving her hand dismissively. "Just get to the part where I inherit everything." Her confidence filled the room like poison. Claire let out a quiet sigh and muttered, "Unbelievable," while Michael shot his wife a sharp look. But Vanessa ignored them both, her eyes locked on the lawyer, as if daring him to delay her victory. I sat quietly, my heart pounding in my chest. I had known Vanessa for years, ever since she married my son, and I had always sensed her greed. She had a way of treating people like stepping stones, using charm when it suited her, and cruelty when it didn't. After my son passed away, she became bolder, acting as if she was the rightful heir to everything my husband and I had worked for. She didn't visit to check on me, didn't call to see how I was holding up. The only time she came around was when money or property was being discussed. And now, here she was, practically salivating at the thought of walking out of that office with control over our estate. The lawyer continued, ignoring her interruption. He read through the legal language, his tone calm and professional. Vanessa rolled her eyes, tapping her manicured nails impatiently against the table. "Just say it," she demanded again, her voice sharper this time. Claire finally snapped. "You know, Vanessa, maybe you should show a little respect. This isn't about you. It's about honoring Dad's memory." Vanessa laughed coldly. "Respect? Don't lecture me about respect. I was part of this family too. I deserve what's mine." I looked at her then, and for the first time that day, I met her eyes. They were hard and cold, filled with entitlement. I wanted to tell her that love and family couldn't be measured in dollars, but I bit my tongue. I knew the lawyer's words would speak louder than anything I could say. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Vanessa, please, let him finish." His voice carried a mix of embarrassment and frustration. He had spent years caught between his wife's demands and the values he was raised with, and I could see the struggle written on his face. The lawyer paused for a moment, looking around the table. His eyes met mine briefly, and something in his expression made my stomach twist. He knew what was coming, and so did I. My late husband and I had spoken privately before his passing, and while he didn't share every detail, he assured me that his final wishes would protect the family's legacy. Still, I couldn't stop the fear building inside me. What if I had misunderstood? What if Vanessa truly had found a way to manipulate the situation? What if, after everything, she walked away with control of the home where I had raised my children, the savings we had built together, and the memories I cherished most? The tension grew heavier with each passing second. Graceful, kind Claire looked like she was ready to explode at Vanessa's smugness. Michael's jaw tightened as he stared at the table, unwilling to meet his wife's eyes. And Vanessa? She sat tall, chin lifted, already acting like she owned it all. The lawyer shuffled the papers and began reading the section everyone was waiting for. The estate, including property, savings, and assets, shall be passed on. He stopped to clear his throat. Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes shining with greedy anticipation. "Here it comes," she whispered. The room seemed to hold its breath. My pulse raced, and I felt my palms grow damp. I knew whatever came next would change the balance of this family forever. Vanessa's arrogance filled the air like a storm cloud, but under it all, there was something else, a quiet strength building in me. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just a grieving widow sitting silently at the table. I was the keeper of my husband's memory, the one who had built a life with him brick by brick. And no matter what the lawyer said, I was ready to stand my ground against Vanessa. The lawyer looked down at the paper again, and the words were about to fall. The silence was unbearable, thick with expectation, fear, and greed. Vanessa's smirk widened, as if she was moments away from tasting victory. And then, with a voice steady and clear, the lawyer spoke the words that shattered her certainty and changed everything. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, the paper trembling slightly in his hands as he read aloud the words that everyone had been waiting for. "According to the wishes of the late Mr. Hayes," he began, "the entire estate shall not be granted to the spouse of his late son, but rather to someone else entirely." The words landed in the room like a thunderclap. For a split second, no one moved. Vanessa's smirk froze on her face, as though she couldn't quite process what she had just heard. Her eyes widened, then narrowed sharply. "What do you mean, someone else?" she snapped, her voice rising. "That's not possible. It should all come to me." The lawyer's calm voice contrasted sharply with her outburst. "Mrs. Hayes, the will is very clear. The estate is not being left to you. If you'll allow me to continue, I will read the name of the person who has been chosen." Vanessa slammed her hand against the polished table, rattling the water glasses. "This is ridiculous. There must be a mistake. I was married into this family. My husband is gone, but his share is mine. That's how it works. Everyone here knows it." She looked around the room, seeking support, but all she saw were uneasy stares. Michael shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair. "Vanessa, maybe you should just let him finish," he muttered. His tone was low, but the shame in his voice was unmistakable. Claire rolled her eyes, folding her arms across her chest. She didn't even bother to hide her disdain. I sat in silence, my heart racing, though my face remained calm. Deep down, I had a feeling I knew what was coming. My husband had not spoken openly about his final will, but he had given me small reassurances in the weeks before he passed. He told me more than once that he would make sure I was secure, that I would not have to worry about greedy hands taking what we had built together. Even so, hearing the lawyer's words now felt like a confirmation of the love we had shared, and of the faith he still placed in me, even after death. Vanessa, on the other hand, was unraveling by the second. "You've got to be joking," she said, her voice trembling now with desperation. "This can't be right." "I'll contest this. I'll take this whole thing to court." She pointed at the lawyer, her finger shaking. "You're reading it wrong. You have to be." The lawyer remained steady, ignoring her accusations. "If you would allow me to continue," he said firmly, "I will read the name as written in the document." He glanced around the table, his eyes lingering on me for a brief moment before returning to the page. "The estate, in its entirety, shall be passed to Mrs. Evelyn Hayes." The words hung in the air. I felt Claire's hand squeeze mine under the table, her touch warm and steady. Michael looked at me with relief flashing across his face, though he said nothing. Vanessa's mouth fell open in shock, her face draining of color. "You?" she gasped, her voice full of disbelief. She leaned forward, glaring at me with an intensity that made the room feel even smaller. "How could it all go to you? You already had your share as his wife. This isn't fair." I finally lifted my head and met her stare. My voice was quiet, but it carried across the room. "It isn't about fair, Vanessa. It's about what my husband wanted. He knew who he could trust with his legacy. He knew who stood by him, who built this life with him from the very beginning. That's why he made this choice." She shook her head violently, her earrings swinging as she snapped back. "No, this is wrong. He would have wanted me to be taken care of. I was his son's wife." "You are my son's wife," I said firmly, my voice rising for the first time that day. "But you were never his partner. You never stood with him when times were hard, and you certainly never stood with me after he passed. You only showed up when money was involved, and my husband saw that. He saw through you." "Vanessa?" The color rose in her cheeks, her arrogance collapsing into panic. She opened her mouth to argue, but no words came. For once, her confidence had been stripped away, leaving nothing but anger and disbelief. The lawyer folded the will neatly and set it on the table. "The decision is final," he said. "This was your father-in-law's wish, and it will be respected." In that moment, I realized the turning point wasn't just the lawyer's words. It was my choice to finally speak up, to stop allowing Vanessa to walk all over me and my family. My husband's will had given me the power, but my own voice had given me the strength to claim it. The room was thick with silence again, but this time, it wasn't fear holding us back. It was the weight of the truth. Vanessa's smirk was gone, and for the first time since we sat down at that table, she looked like she had lost. For a long, heavy moment, no one spoke. The words had been said. The entire estate was mine. It was exactly what my husband had promised before he passed, but hearing it aloud in that quiet office felt like a storm breaking. Vanessa sat frozen, her mouth half open, as if she was still trying to form a reply. Her hands clutched the arms of her chair so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Finally, she burst out, "This is outrageous! I gave years of my life to this family. I deserve something. You can't just cut me out like this." The lawyer calmly slid the will across the table, his tone steady. "Mrs. Hayes, your father-in-law's decision was carefully documented. It is entirely legal and binding. There is no mistake." Her eyes blazed. "Legal and binding? Do you really think I'll accept this?" "You're all going to regret this decision." She looked straight at me, her glare sharp as glass. "Evelyn, you manipulated him. You turned him against me." I straightened in my chair, and for the first time that day, I allowed my voice to rise. "No, Vanessa, I didn't turn him against you. You did that yourself every time you treated my son's memory like a stepping stone. Every time you walked into this house only when money was involved. Every time you showed this family what truly mattered to you." Claire leaned forward, her voice firm. "Mom's right. You never cared about this family, Vanessa. You only cared about what you could take." Michael finally spoke too, his tone weary but clear. "Vanessa, Dad saw through it. You can't blame anyone else. You brought this on yourself." Vanessa's face flushed red. She slammed her hand on the table again, rattling the water glasses. "This isn't over. I'll take this to court. I'll fight until I get what I deserve." The lawyer looked directly at her, his expression unflinching. "You are, of course, free to pursue legal action, but I can assure you, you will lose. This will is airtight. Your late father-in-law was very thorough in his wishes." Her bravado cracked. She shifted in her chair, her breath coming faster. For the first time, her smirk was gone, replaced by desperation. She looked around the table, but no one was on her side. Claire's eyes were narrowed in anger. Michael sat slumped, disappointed. And I felt no need to gloat. I spoke again, quietly but firmly. "Vanessa, you thought this day would be about riches. But for me, it's about legacy. This estate isn't just money. It's a life my husband and I built together, brick by brick, with sacrifice and love. He knew who could be trusted to carry that forward, and he knew it wasn't you." The room went silent again. Vanessa's lip trembled, but she pressed her mouth shut. Her arrogance had collapsed into something smaller. something weaker. She grabbed her designer handbag, stood abruptly, and muttered, "You'll regret this." Then she stormed toward the door, slamming it so hard behind her that the walls shook. The sound echoed in the quiet office, and then it was gone. She was gone, and just like that, so was her hold over us. I sat there for a moment, staring at the papers on the table, my chest rising and falling as I tried to take in what had just happened. Claire squeezed my hand again, whispering, "Mom, he kept his promise." Michael nodded, his face lined with relief. For the first time in years, I saw peace in his eyes. The lawyer cleared his throat, gathering the documents into a neat stack. "Mrs. Hayes, everything will now move forward in your name. Your husband made it very clear that his estate should stay with you." Hearing those words felt like a release, not because of the money, not because of the property, but because my husband's love and trust had carried beyond his death. He had chosen to protect me, even when he wasn't here anymore. As we walked out of the office, the sun had begun to set, painting the sky with streaks of gold and soft red. I breathed deeply, feeling lighter than I had in months. Vanessa's absence felt like a weight lifted. For once, I wasn't haunted by her smirks and sly remarks. For once, the future felt like it belonged to us again. That moment, the lawyer's words, her outburst, and the truth finally revealed, was the climax of not just a will reading, but years of silent battles. I had stayed quiet for so long, letting Vanessa's arrogance fill the air. But that day, I realized something powerful. The truth always rises, and those who live in greed eventually fall. When Vanessa stormed out of that office, the air finally felt clear. For months, maybe even years, she had carried herself like a shadow over this family, always reminding us of what she believed she deserved. But in that moment, as the sound of the slamming door echoed away, I realized her power was gone. All her arrogance and entitlement had vanished with her retreat. I sat at the polished wooden table, staring at the stack of papers that represented my husband's legacy. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear anymore, but from relief. Claire leaned close, her eyes filled with quiet pride. "Mom," she whispered, "he meant it when he said he would take care of you. Even after he was gone, he still did." Her words pierced through the heaviness in my chest, and for the first time that day, I allowed myself a deep breath. Michael spoke too, his voice softer than I had heard in years. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have stood up to Vanessa more. I should have defended you when she acted like this estate was hers. I let her arrogance take over everything." His eyes lowered, but I shook my head gently. "No, Michael," I said firmly. "Don't take the blame for her choices. You were caught between loyalty and survival. Your father knew the truth. He saw her for who she really was. That's why he made this decision. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about protecting us." We left the office together, the three of us walking side by side into the cool evening air. The sky was streaked with orange and purple, the kind of sunset that made you stop and think about how small your worries really are compared to the bigger picture. As the wind brushed against my face, I thought about how much my husband had carried for our family. He had always been the shield, the one to keep the peace, the one to sacrifice so others could have more. Now, even in death, he was still protecting us. That night, when I returned home, the house felt different. It wasn't that anything had changed physically. The furniture was the same. The photos of my children and late husband still lined the walls. The scent of old wood and familiar rooms still wrapped around me. But the weight of uncertainty was gone. For weeks, I had feared that Vanessa might take this place away from me, the home where I had raised my children, where I had built a life with the man I loved. But now, I knew this house, and everything tied to it, was safe. I walked into the living room and ran my hand across the frame of the wedding photo sitting on the mantel. My husband's smile stared back at me, calm and strong, just as I remembered. Tears filled my eyes, but they were not tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of gratitude, gratitude that he had loved me enough to think beyond his own life, gratitude that he trusted me to continue what we started, and gratitude that, for once, justice had found its way into our family. Over the next few days, word spread quickly through our relatives. Some were shocked, others nodded knowingly, admitting they had seen Vanessa's greed all along. A few even called me to say they admired how calmly I had handled myself that day. But what mattered most was the way my children rallied around me. Claire came by often, cooking meals and filling the house with laughter again. Michael visited too, more present than he had been in years, determined to rebuild what Vanessa's attitude had broken. As for Vanessa, she tried sending angry messages, claiming she would challenge the will, but her words had lost their power. The lawyer reassured me again that the will was ironclad, and deep down, I knew she wouldn't follow through. She thrived on intimidation, not truth. Without her smirk and her sharp words in the room, she was just noise in the distance. In the quiet moments, I thought about what lesson I wanted to carry from all this. It wasn't about wealth or winning. It wasn't even about the satisfaction of seeing Vanessa leave empty-handed. It was about understanding the true meaning of legacy. My husband hadn't left me the estate to make me rich. He had left it because he knew I would protect it, nurture it, and use it to keep our family standing. He trusted me because he had seen my loyalty, my sacrifices, and my love through all the years we were together. The greatest lesson I learned that day was this: greed always exposes itself, but love and loyalty leave behind something that cannot be shaken. Vanessa believed money would make her powerful, but all it did was show how empty she really was. In contrast, my husband's choice showed the strength of trust, the value of family, and the importance of protecting what truly matters. Now, when I walk through my home, I don't feel fear anymore. I feel peace. I feel proud that my children can look at me and know that no one, not even someone as determined as Vanessa, could take away the legacy their father and I built together. That will reading wasn't just the end of Vanessa's expectations. It was the beginning of a new chapter for us, one where we could finally breathe without her shadow hanging over us. It reminded me that even when people try to twist love into greed, the truth always finds its way through. And so, when I think back on that day, I don't remember the slammed door or the anger in Vanessa's voice. I remember the quiet strength I found in myself and the calm assurance that my husband's final words gave me. That is what I will carry for the rest of my life. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and share in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too.